Hello and welcome to Playa del Carmen. Now where I'm standing right here in Playa del Carmen is within what's called the restricted zone of Mexico. So what that means is that foreigners historically have not been allowed to buy property within the restricted zone, which is 50 kilometers from any coastlines. In fact, where I'm standing, the coastline is only about 30 yards behind me. So foreigners have not been allowed to buy here, and that includes the entire Riviera Maya, Playa del Carmen, Tulum, any coastal area in Mexico, as well as within 100 kilometers of borders. Nevertheless, there are thousands and thousands of Americans, Canadians, Europeans, non-Mexicans of all nationalities scooping up property, scooping up land within this restricted zone, so-called restricted zone. The reason they're able to do that is because recently, a few years ago, the Mexican government, in fact, made it extremely simple and straightforward to set up a structure where you, as a non-Mexican, can buy and hold land within this zone. And I put together a little presentation. It's less than 10 minutes long, but I go over everything that you need to know as somebody who might be considering buying property within 50 kilometers of the coastline. So I hope you find it useful. If you have any questions that come up throughout, please leave a comment down below and enjoy. All right, in the next 5 minutes, I'm going to give you everything you need to know about buying property in Mexico's restricted zone as a non-Mexican national, including the different structures that you can use to acquire the property, the exact buying process from A to Z, broken down into 6 steps, as well as the costs, tax implications, including capital gains, property tax, and overall you're just going to come out of this video as a complete expert in buying your first property in Mexico. So the restricted zone is within 50 kilometers of any coastline or 31 miles or within 100 kilometers of the border. It used to be the case that non-Mexican nationals were unable to buy property within these zones. However, the Mexican government wants foreign investment, and they've made it much easier for foreigners to do so, including within the restricted zone. There are 2 legal structures that can be used to buy property in the restricted zone. The first is called a fideicomiso in Spanish, also known as a bank trust. This is the more common way of setting it up. There is a bit of a turnaround time to get one of these set up. It's about 5 to 6 weeks, and the bank name appears on the property, but you as the beneficiary have all rights over the property, including renovation, building, if you want to build a building on your property. In most cases, unless there's an HOA, you have the full rights based on the fideicomiso. You can sell it, you can rent it. It's not an asset of the bank. If the bank were to shut down, the property, the trust would automatically be transferred to another bank. Each trust can have one property within it. So if you want to buy multiple properties, you need multiple trusts. Typically, there's a 50-year term, and then it gets renewed after those 50 years for a very nominal fee. And the cost of setting this up is about $1,500 plus a $500 registration fee. And then every year, you're going to be paying about $500 to $800 per year. The second structure that you can use to buy property in Mexico is the corporation. This is what I personally use, and similar cost to get set up, $1,500 setup fee, and you're also going to have to pay an accountant somewhere in the neighborhood of $100 a month to keep the books up to date on the property. It's actually a shorter setup process. It's only about 1 to 2 weeks to get a corporation set up, but what that gives you is all the same legal rights as if you were a Mexican citizen. You can own unlimited properties within the corporation. And generally, people tend to use this if they intend on owning multiple properties or if they intend on using it for business purposes, such as investment, because you get better asset protection. There's also different ways of structuring tax planning, which are a little bit more streamlined and beneficial, as well as estate planning. And because it's your corporation directly owning the property, there also is somewhat of a sense of having more direct control, although in practice, there isn't really much of a difference. Generally, there are 4 parties involved in a real estate transaction involving a bank trust and 3 involving a corporation. So the first is your trusted real estate broker. The second is your buyer's attorney. We work with several buyer's attorneys who have an abundance of experience facilitating these types of transactions through bank trusts and corporations, and basically specialize in assisting non-Mexican nationals in acquiring property in Mexico. The third is the bank. This is only relevant when you have a bank trust fideicomiso set up. And the fourth is what's called the notary public, which represents the state, and basically it makes the transaction official. It ratifies all of the documents involved and then calculates capital gains. Now, moving on to taxes. So One of the most appealing things about having property in Mexico is that due to the extremely low property tax rate, the carrying costs are very low. So if you're coming from North America, the USA, or Canada, you might be paying around 1% annual property tax or even more. In Mexico, it's about 1/10 of that. So it's 0.1% of the appraised value per year, meaning if you have a $500,000 property, you're only paying about $40 a month in property tax. Capital gains tax is also pretty low. Officially, it's 30%. But usually it works out to about 5 to 10% net once you factor in all of the generous deductions that you can take. And lastly, if you're in the US, most IRAs and 401ks will actually allow you to purchase Mexican property, which also carries with it many tax advantages. This is very frequently used. It's not an uncommon occurrence at all. A lot of people do this. So the buying process broken down into 6 steps. Step 1, choose the property you want to buy. Step 2, make your offer. Step 3, there might be some back and forth, especially if you offer less than the asking price. You're going to come to an agreement in terms of the price and terms of the purchase. You're going to have to put down an earnest money deposit. Typically, this is $5,000. At that point, your attorney is going to make a contract. And once both parties agree and sign, you're going to have to come up with about 40% of the value of that property, what's known as the good faith deposit, to take it off the market. And historically, this has been a cash market, but due to the increase in demand from non-Mexicans who want to buy property in Mexico, there are a lot of lenders that are coming out in order to provide that service. So we have a great connection with one lender in particular. So go ahead and book a call with me if you'd like to discuss that as an option. And then step 6 is the closing. So once the contract has been signed by both parties, you have your legal structure in place, everybody signed, everybody agreed. At this point is when the notary public will authenticate and validate the transaction, basically make it official in the eyes of the state, and the deed changes hands from the seller into the buyer. Closing costs basically is going to add up to about 6 to 8% of the total value of the property. And that's broken down as follows. There's a 3% transfer tax and a $500 to $1,000 one-time registration fee. And then you have your notary fee, which typically runs just under $500, as well as the cost to set up either the trust or the corporation, which I outlined above. So I hope you found that presentation useful. Regardless of where you're at in the buying process, whether you're very familiar with the Riviera Maya and you're looking for a property within a specific region that you like, or whether you are still not sure of where you want to buy in the Riviera Maya and you're looking for suggestions on what might be best and most suitable for you based on your circumstances, or if you actually have a property in mind, maybe you found a property somewhere online, you'd like to tour it, you need somebody on the ground to facilitate that, go ahead and book a call with me. I love helping people follow in my footsteps in terms of buying property in the Riviera Maya as a non-Mexican national, whether that's to move to the Riviera Maya, whether that's just for investment or a place to park your money. You can book a call with me at paradisehomes.youcanbook.me. And I look forward to speaking to you soon. And I hope to see you one day in Tulum, Playa del Carmen, or the Riviera Maya. Cheers.